The sky over Tupelo was heavy that night, thick with rain and static. The kind of rain that soaks your socks the moment you step out of the car. And standing outside the Mid-South Coliseum, shivering under a thin plastic poncho, was a boy named Johnny, 13 years old. Cerebral palsy had left his legs weak, his speech slow, and his body often tired. But his heart, it was on fire, because tonight he was going to see Elvis Presley. His father, a quiet man with calloused hands, held the umbrella over Johnny's wheelchair as they approached the side entrance marked accessible. He had the tickets clutched in his hand, special seats close to the stage. They'd saved for months. Skipped dinners out, sold old tools, anything to make tonight possible. A night Johnny had been counting down to since Christmas. But as they neared the door, a security guard stepped in front of them. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a soaked uniform and the kind of expression that said, "Rules are rules." "I'm sorry," the guard said, barely glancing at the boy. "This entrance is restricted. You'll have to use the general line." The father looked confused. "Sir, he's in a wheelchair. We were told to come here." "Yeah, well," the guard shrugged. "Plans change. We don't have room for special access anymore. Management's orders." Johnny's eyes fell to the puddle at his feet. He didn't understand. He had the tickets. He was early. Why was he being turned away? His dad tried again, voice cracking now. "He's waited so long for this." The guard didn't budge. Then a rumble of tires through puddles. A sleek black Cadillac pulled into the lot nearby. It didn't stop at the VIP entrance. It rolled slowly toward the side entrance and came to a halt. The driver's door opened. A familiar figure stepped out, adjusting his collar against the rain. And in that moment, everything was about to change. Johnny wasn't like most boys his age. He couldn't run or ride a bike or wrestle with the kids down the street. Most days, his world was confined to a wheelchair and a small living room where he'd spend hours listening to Elvis records with the volume cranked up high. He knew the lyrics by heart, every word, every breath. He'd even learned to mimic the singer's famous lip curl and shoulder shimmy, though he could only do it from his chair. To Johnny, Elvis wasn't just music. He was magic. He was freedom. And Elvis reminded him of his mother. She used to dance in the kitchen when Elvis came on the radio. That was before the cancer, before the hospital visits, before the silence. After she passed, the only time Johnny really smiled again was when Elvis's voice came through the speakers. For Johnny, the king wasn't just an entertainer. He was a connection to the one person who had loved him without limits. So when his father saw that Elvis would be performing just a few hours away, he made a promise. "You'll see him live, Johnny. I don't care what it takes." They cut corners everywhere. No holiday gifts. No birthday party. His father picked up extra shifts, skipped meals, pawned his watch. Eventually, he had enough for 2 tickets, accessible seats close to the stage. Not the cheapest, but close enough so Johnny could see every shake and shimmer. And on the night of the concert, Johnny didn't care about the rain. He didn't care about his aching legs or the cold. He was too busy imagining what it would feel like to hear "Can't Help Falling in Love" echo through a real concert hall. To see Elvis live. To feel like he mattered, not because someone let him in out of pity, but because he had a ticket just like everyone else. But standing there, blocked by a security guard with a cold voice and colder eyes, that dream started slipping away. And Elvis hadn't even taken the stage yet. Just as the guard began to turn his attention elsewhere, the low thrum of a car engine caught everyone's ear. Heads turned. The black Cadillac, now fully parked, stood still in the lot like it had always belonged there. Rain pelted the hood. Then the door opened, slowly, deliberately. Elvis Presley stepped out into the storm. But this wasn't the stage Elvis. There were no rhinestones tonight. No fanfare, no sunglasses, just a dark trench coat, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, and that unmistakable silhouette. Even soaked in rain, his presence cut through the cold like sunlight. He scanned the area calmly. His eyes moved over the fans, the loading dock. The guard then stopped on Johnny. For a brief moment, everything else faded. The noise, the rain, even the guard's voice. It all seemed to hush when Elvis saw that wheelchair. He didn't say a word. He just walked straight toward Johnny. The guard took a nervous step forward. "Sir, this is a restricted area." But Elvis didn't stop. He crouched beside Johnny, his coat dripping into the puddles, and said with the gentlest voice, "Hey there, little man. You here to see the show?" Johnny blinked, his mouth open, but no words came. His eyes welled up, not just because he was starstruck, but because someone had finally looked at him like he belonged. Elvis looked up at the boy's father, Something wrong with the entrance. The father hesitated. They said there's no room for special needs tonight. Elvis stood up slowly, towering now in front of the stunned security guard. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Well, there's room now. The guard stammered, I was just following orders, Mr. Presley. Elvis took off his hat and shook the water from his hair. Then he stepped beside Johnny's chair and gently placed a hand on the handle. I'll be escorting my friend and myself, he said. He's got the best seat in the house tonight. And just like that, the king of rock and roll became a one-man welcoming committee, rolling Johnny past the ropes, past the guard, and into the warmth of the arena. The storm outside was still raging. But inside, something much more powerful had just begun. They made it about 20 feet before another official rushed over, a man in a suit with a clipboard and a headset. He recognized Elvis instantly and plastered on a smile that tried too hard. Mr. Presley, so sorry for the confusion. Is there a problem with your party? Elvis didn't return the smile. He looked the man in the eyes and said, Yeah, there's a problem. You turned away this boy and his father because he's in a wheelchair, said there wasn't room for him tonight. The man shifted, clearly rattled. I'm sure that's a misunderstanding, our policy. Elvis cut him off with quiet strength. Your policy needs to change. There was no anger in his voice, just disappointment, the kind of disappointment that digs deeper than rage ever could. I've played in cities all over this country, he said, now loud enough for nearby staff and guests to hear. I've met thousands of fans, but this boy came through the cold, the rain, and every obstacle you can imagine just to be here tonight, and you tried to turn him away. The man opened his mouth, then closed it. Elvis looked down at Johnny, who was staring up at him like he was witnessing a miracle in real time. You know what my mama used to say? He asked, glancing back at the staff. She said, you don't ever measure a man by his clothes, his money, or the way he walks. You measure him by the way he treats folks who need a little help. The room had gone still. A few other concert-goers had wandered close, curious about the scene. And now they watched silently, phones tucked away, momentarily suspended in real life. Elvis turned back to the man in the suit. This boy is coming in as my guest. He's not backstage. He's not in the nosebleeds. He's gonna sit right beside me. And he's gonna hear every note like it was sung just for him. And then Elvis smiled for the first time that evening. Because tonight, he's the most important person in this building. The staff member's face softened. The clipboard dropped to his side. He nodded. And for the first time all night, Johnny didn't feel small. He felt like a king, too. Backstage, the lights were dim. The band tuned their instruments. Assistants buzzed in and out. But Elvis, he sat quietly in a folding chair beside Johnny's wheelchair, sipping a warm cup of coffee. His stage time was minutes away, but you wouldn't have known it. He looked completely at peace. Johnny had stopped shaking. His eyes sparkled. His mouth hung open in a half-smile of disbelief. Elvis chuckled softly. You know, I used to get that same look when I met B.B. King. Johnny's dad stood nearby, still holding onto the damp jacket he had removed in the hallway. He finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Mr. Presley, thank you. I don't know what to say. Elvis looked up, his expression turning serious. You don't have to say a word. I should be thanking you. The father looked confused. Elvis leaned back in his chair, his voice softer now, more reflective. When I was a kid, we had nothing. Lived in a 2-room shack in Tupelo. Sometimes we went days without heat. My mama, she scrubbed floors just to keep food on our table. And I remember once, we went into this diner just to get out of the rain. She asked if I could use the bathroom, and the lady behind the counter looked her up and down and said, We don't serve your kind here. He paused, rubbing the rim of his coffee cup with his thumb. I was only 9, but I never forgot the way that felt. Seeing my mother, the strongest woman I've ever known, get looked at like she was nothing. He looked over at Johnny. That's why I make it a point to see people. Really see them. Not just the ones clapping in the front row. Not just the ones in tuxedos, but the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones folks try to push aside. Johnny smiled, a real one this time. Elvis winked. That's why I sing, Johnny, not for the gold records, not for the screaming crowds, for moments like this, to remind people they matter. Just then a stagehand poked in. 5 minutes, Mr. Presley. Elvis stood and looked down at Johnny. You ready, partner? Johnny nodded, wiping his eyes. Elvis grinned. Good, let's make some noise. And with that, the king didn't just take the stage. He brought a whole heart with him. The auditorium roared as Elvis stepped into the spotlight. The crowd had no idea what had just happened backstage, only that the king had arrived, his silhouette glowing beneath the hot lights and curling fog. But what no one expected was the boy beside him. Johnny sat just off stage, wheels locked, beaming as the music began. A single spotlight lingered on him for a moment before sliding away. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't tucked in the back. He was part of it. And as the band kicked into "That's All Right," Elvis gave Johnny a nod like a secret between friends. The first few songs flew by in a blur of cheers and guitar riffs, but midway through the set, Elvis slowed the pace. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. "I'd like to take a moment," he said, his southern drawl warm and steady. "There's a special guest in the house tonight, someone who reminded me why I do what I do." He looked toward Johnny, and the boy straightened up, his face glowing under the faint stage lights. "This next one is for him." The band eased into "Can't Help Falling in Love," and the room turned to glass. Every note floated like a prayer. Every lyric landed like a whisper. The audience didn't cheer, they just listened. And Johnny, he didn't blink, he didn't move. He just let the music wash over him like sunlight on skin. People in the audience began wiping their eyes. Couples reached for each other's hands. Even the security guard from earlier, now standing near the back, bowed his head in quiet respect. When the final note hung in the air, the silence that followed was louder than any applause. And then a standing ovation. Not for the glitz, not for the fame, but for the heart. Elvis walked over to Johnny, bent down, and whispered something into his ear. Johnny nodded. And later, when his dad asked him what Elvis had said, Johnny smiled and whispered, "He told me I was the real star tonight." That night, Johnny didn't just attend a concert. He became part of Elvis's story. And in doing so, Elvis became part of his forever. The story of that rainy night traveled faster than any chart-topping hit. At first, it was just whispers among the backstage crew. Then the stagehands shared it with their friends, and the fans who had seen the wheelchair near the curtain began telling their version of events. Local newspapers caught wind of it. By the following week, radio hosts across the South were talking about how Elvis Presley had stopped everything for one boy. But it didn't stop there. Months later, Johnny's father received a handwritten letter in the mail. It had the TCB lightning bolt symbol on the top. Inside, Elvis had written, "You reminded me what this all means. Thank you for showing me what really matters." Johnny kept that letter in a frame above his bed. And the concert? It changed something in him. He went from being the quiet kid in the wheelchair to a young man with purpose. In high school, he became a public speaker. Later, a disability rights advocate. Whenever someone asked what inspired him, he always told the story of "the night Elvis saw me." But maybe what's most remarkable is how Elvis himself never tried to make the story about him. He never bragged about what happened. He never told the press. For him, it was just doing the right thing, treating a fan not like a burden, but like a brother. And that kind of humility, that's what stuck. Years later, as more stories surfaced of Elvis secretly donating to hospitals, paying strangers medical bills, visiting sick children, fans began to understand. The real legacy of Elvis Presley wasn't just his music. It was the way he made people feel seen, valued, and loved. Because in a world obsessed with celebrity, Elvis never forgot what it meant to be human. And all it took was one moment, one act of kindness, one wheelchair stuck in the rain. That's what made Elvis legendary. Not the gold records, not the sold-out shows, but the choice to stop and see someone the world had overlooked. If this story touched your heart like it did ours, we hope you'll take a moment to reflect not just on who Elvis was, but on who we can be for each other. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone saw you, really saw you, when no one else did? Share it in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of kindness, second chances, and treating every person with dignity, please subscribe to our channel. Give this video a thumbs up so more people hear Johnny's story. Because the truth is, we all have a little Elvis in us. The question is, will we use it?